The head of the African Union Commission has called for restraint, calm and dialogue as the border dispute between Ethiopia and Sudan threatens to escalate. In a statement, Moussa Faki Mahamat says that the two neighbours should settle any disagreement peacefully. All right, so our apologies there. There's no sound on that particular story. But for more, we're now joined by Dr. Madut, who's a professor of citizenship and public affairs at Syracuse University. Prof, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Good to see you again, Peter.
Yes, good to see you. It's unfortunate what we're seeing on the Ethiopia-Sudan border. What do you make of this latest development?
It is extremely unfortunate, as you say, that when at the time when everybody was focusing on the war in northern Ethiopia and Tigray region, and that there was all this confrontation between Ethiopia and Egypt, there is now this unfortunate development between Sudan and South Sudan, and Ethiopia. I think what this means is that it has always been said that when the time comes, the wars being fought over water will become more intense than wars over other resources. So this is what is manifesting itself now, that what you see being a confrontation between Egypt and Sudan, or between Sudan and Ethiopia, a lot of it is to do with the waters of the Nile. And all along, people thought this could be resolved and addressed through dialogue, but now it's certainly becoming the realization of the worst nightmare of a confrontation over water through this border confrontation. I think it is a terrible time for Africa, terrible time for the world, that we are now seeing a war over resources manifesting itself in this ghastly way.
How is it that the armies are involved? Usually when it comes to resources, it's civilians that fight over that. Why would soldiers be fighting over water?
Well, I think it depends on the political dispensation in Khartoum and in Addis Ababa. If both capitals see the dwindling water resources as being a national security of the country, this is the result. But if each capital saw the issue of water as such a fundamental problem that cannot be resolved by war, there would have been a push for dialogue and for people to sit down and work out what is the issue. And also to know that this is simply going on between people who have shared all kinds of resources since time immemorial. But when it comes to the situation between Sudan and Ethiopia, is it happening? Is the war becoming an option because the two countries are seeking that option, or is any one of these countries being pushed by another source? I think you can easily point fingers at Egypt as being the one that wants, the party that wants the issue of water being resolved through a military confrontation, because there have been agreements since 1929 in colonial times. There have been agreements, there have been rapprochement between the capitals within the region, but a lot of times these agreements don't hold water, and military option has to be considered by any party. And now I think it's becoming clear that these agreements are not working, and war is an option on the part of the most powerful party like Egypt and Sudan. There is this Ethiopian project called the Great Renaissance Dam, which is now going to control the flow of the Blue Nile, the biggest part, the biggest amount of water that flows into the main body of the Nile. 80% of the Nile water comes from Ethiopia, from Lake Tana, and now it has been dammed, and Ethiopia will control the amount of water that flows to Egypt. Egypt is unhappy with this, and Sudan could easily be used to fight this war by proxy.
What is it about this area, Al-Fashaga, that is particularly disputed?
Well, this particular border region has had one particular importance, and that is when the war broke out in northern Ethiopia between Tigray and the Federal Republic of Ethiopia. This particular region was used by the rebel groups from northern Ethiopia as a sort of regroupment and supply region and a buffer against the Ethiopian federal forces. And Sudan was able to use it as a way to supply the rebels on those moments when the rebels needed a supply from outside. And this region has been known all along as Ethiopian, and then suddenly when it became so strategic and important during the Ethiopian war, Sudan asserted its dominance and its control of the region, so that it can be used as a way to supply the rebels of Ethiopia. And now Ethiopia is saying that Sudan should not use that region because it's Ethiopian territory. So you can say that there are three main reasons why this region is very important. One is the dispute over territory between two countries, and there are many places like this all across Africa that are due to colonial carving of the continent. The second issue is when the war started in Ethiopia, each Ethiopia and Sudan wanted to control the region so that it cannot be used to stage any assault on the other. The third one is that this region is a potential territory for Ethiopia to sort of stage a buffer zone against the possibility of Egypt wanting to use it as a way to threaten the GERD, which is the Great Ethiopia Renaissance Dam, the dam on the White Nile. So those are the three reasons why this place is so important. These are crucial issues, and I know that there is no way this issue this confrontation can be resolved through military action. It can only be resolved if the three parties, Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia, could sit down and work out this thing through peaceful means.
Can a peaceful route be found? And I wonder if it isn't a complication that Khartoum is being run by a military coup.
Certainly, if it had been a civilian democratic government that took over in 2019 from a 30-year dictatorship, I think people would have rather preferred a dialogue, a peaceful settlement of a dispute. But because in Khartoum today sits a military junta which hijacked the people's revolution, which we all know was supported and is supported by Egypt, by UAE, by Saudi Arabia, by other external forces, I think there is now a preference for a military solution, because a dialogue would simply give Egypt, give Ethiopia a just decision to keep the region as part of Ethiopia. But because there are all these other external forces, there is likely going to be the use of force to force Ethiopia to accept that this region belongs to Sudan for military strategic reasons. I think everybody can see that this is an Ethiopian territory, and Sudan is trying to use it to fight on behalf of Egypt that this territory is Sudanese. Not for any strategic importance for Sudan, but strategic importance for external forces such as Egypt and the Arab world.
All right, Dr. Jock Madut. Jock, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much indeed. Your insights greatly appreciated. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Good night. That's a Sudan expert there, Professor Jock Madut Jock, who's a professor of citizenship and public affairs at Syracuse University, New York State in the United States.